Welcome back to Vetted VA Live, where we get together here every Tuesday at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. And you guys can figure out the math on the in-between areas there, Central and Mountain Time. We are always, as always, joined by three of our moderating experts. We have three excellent lenders here with us tonight, and we're going to be covering a topic that doesn't come up a lot, so much to the point that among the four of us, we've only done three of these loans ever in our careers. And there's a group of people that does a large volume of VA loans. So before we go into it, I always like to introduce our experts that we have with us tonight, get a little bit of background and hear about their market and where they're from. So to my left, right, it's actually, I don't know, one of my sides here, I got Glenn Groves. Glenn, you're in Northern California. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your business, and give us a little heat check on what your market looks like right now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Josh. So located in Sonoma County up here in Northern California. We've got a couple bases up here, Travis Air Force Base, Two Rock Coast Guard Base as well. So we have a fair amount of VA business as well as down in Southern California. We've got Marine Corps ties down in San Diego. But as far as our market, we're starting to see, I'm calling it a normalization. Everybody's saying, oh, market shift, all this, but sellers are way more receptive right now to any sort of loan, really. Buyers, they're going to bring to the table, but especially VA loans, just because there was a recent circular that was released, which we already were privy to, essentially in California, that VA buyers can pay for pest inspections and repairs and stuff like that. That was always a huge point to be made, but we're definitely seeing a normalization. This is not a crash or anything like that, but it's really good. It's a great opportunity for buyers right now. Rates are looking the best they have in a couple months. We're excited for our buyers out there.
You guys, we were seeing in the forums for the last year and a half, really discouraged VA buyers. Really just well-qualified VA buyers saying, they don't even look at my offer. So absolutely, we're in SoCal, you're in NorCal. Our market is definitely, like you said, normalized, and it's just people that are well-qualified are able to get FHA, VA offers considered when they couldn't a little while ago. So, Claire, you are in Salem, Oregon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business and give us a little heat check on your market?
Yeah, thanks. I am in Oregon. I own my brokerage with my dad, and my husband's a realtor. So I can't really get away from it. That's all we ever talk about is just the real estate market. So Oregon is, I think normalize is a good word for it. I was just talking to a doctor earlier today at an appointment, and he was like, okay, so what's happening? And I just have said it's cooling, but it's not crashing. Like there's definitely, it was getting kind of out of control there. It felt like so discouraging, like you said. So I definitely still see some multiple offer situations, but it's not going sky high above list price. Sometimes it's no activity at all for a couple of weeks. Stuff's definitely staying on the market longer. So it's definitely encouraging that it's not is feeling like impossible to get your offer accepted, but it's definitely, we're in a different market than we were 6 months ago. It's a pretty dramatic shift, but it doesn't mean that it's, the end of times. So it's just different.
Absolutely. So you have a family-owned business. Glenn, your business is also family-owned.
Yeah. My mother, Elisa, and I, own GTG Financial here last 5 years or so.
So same for me. I came from, my grandpa was a realtor. My mother was a originator. My cousin was a processor, and they drugged me into this business. And here we are. So that leaves us with you, Amy. Amy, you're in the Chicagoland area. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how your family pulled you into this market or not.
They did not. Most of my family are like medical or other like hospitality businesses. Salon. So I'm really the only one actually in business in my immediate family. And I come from a family of 8 kids. So that's something. We're like scattered careers. I got into it, right out of school back when the basically the market was unregulated and like you were doing work without being licensed. That's how long I've, before I did it. I exited, went into corporate finance for a while, and then I just got kind of back in this space. I am a small broker owner shop here in Chicago, but we are licensed in like 8 states. So I do get the post of sort of like a little nationwide post, a little bit in the east, west coast, a little central. In Chicagoland, specifically, I'm seeing the same, same trends, cooling off of all these multi offers, crazy offers. I'm getting a lot of contracts accepted. So, my pre-approved buyers are getting stuff accepted. They're Most of them are getting concessions that they asked for. So it's pretty amazing now. It's not like completely turned, but they're like, with the rise in interest rates, every little bit helps. So, we're seeing some positive trends for the buyers right now.
Tell me how each of the three of you feel about this. In my neighborhood, recently we've had 3 homes, very similar square footage. One came on the market, and those people, when they bought it 5, 6, 7 years ago, did a full renovation, internal, beautiful, most curb appeal of any house in the neighborhood. Theirs comes on the market in 3 days. It sells above list price. We had another one come back on market. It's a nice house. It just needs maybe a little refreshing, updating. It was updated late 90s, early 2000s. And that one fell out, came back on the market, and we had a price reduction on another one. All of them are listed at about the same prices. But does that sound about what you guys are seeing in your market? The bitchin' perfect homes are still getting a lot of offers and going pretty quickly. And then where you fall on that scale kind of depends on how much demand there is for that property and how easy of a time you as a buyer are going to have in getting that under contract. Does that resonate with you guys' markets?
Yeah. I mean, the cream is rising, and it's not, we're completely leaving the market behind of listed. It's going to sell itself. This is really turning into a professionals market where a great agent can really advise their seller properly, whether it's a couple little renovations or just the correct price point up front. Right. So yes, absolutely.
I am seeing buyers walk away more. So there was a point where there was like a lot of desperation. They just didn't care. They were just going to get that capital somewhere and make it up because they just wanted a home. But I am seeing a lot of buyers walk away. In Illinois specifically, we have that like attorney inspection period, first like 5 to 10 days of the contract. It is specifically for that. And I like more and more of them walking away recently, like last month or so. So that's happening for sure.
I would say the same thing here. A year ago it was so hard getting a home under contract that if the inspection came back horrible and the seller told someone to pound sand, they'd probably still go, well, I don't want to go back out there and fight this battle again, and would just deal with it. And more are saying, no, I want either a seller that's reasonable or a home that doesn't have these issues. So, all right, I appreciate you guys' input, and I know everyone likes hearing from around the market what it's actually looking like from people that are out dealing with people in the market buying homes. But let's get to today's topic. Like I said, back in episode 8, we talked about split or bonus entitlement, where you can use your VA entitlement to own more than one home with a VA loan. Today, we're talking specifically about joint loans. So a loan with either a veteran and a non-veteran, or 2 veterans both using their entitlement. But Glenn, why don't you go a little bit deeper on that and explain to us the difference between bonus or split entitlement and what we're talking about today and joint loans?
Sure. Well, so the first thing is terminology, right? And I mean, we already went through this earlier today in the fact of joint loans versus bonus entitlement, or versus split entitlement, right? And different people use different terminology. Different regional loan centers will even use different terminology. I've called them and talked about split entitlement with them, but we're really talking about bonus entitlement, right? So for all intents and purposes, for this call, I think we should stick to it's joint loans that we're talking about here. Okay. Bonus.
And if someone wants to go in super detail on the bonus entitlement or split entitlement, go back to episode 8 and go.
Because bonus entitlement, that's more of you using your VA loan once for a primary residence, obviously, and then using it again, say if you were to PCS to a different duty station or simply move to a different area. You can have 2 VA loans at the same time. Of course, there's a little bit of math that goes into it, other stipulations, but that's bonus entitlement. Okay. Joint loan, which we're going to be talking about here today, is just what Josh was alluding to, which is either 2 veterans that are not spouses, okay, a vet or a non-vet. And what that would equate to for, is there a down payment required? Whose entitlements being used in those type situations, et cetera. So it's a different it's not a different loan product, but it's a different subset of a VA loan that requires different types of approvals, different lenders do them, etc. So that's what we're going to cover here today.
Perfect. Now, Claire, you had mentioned you've actually done a couple of them. I've done one, and we're the only ones here. And again, this is a group that does a lot of VA loans. These are not common. The bonus or split entitlement comes up fairly regularly. When you mentioned it's sort of PCS season, this stuff comes up all the time. People that are getting moved around, don't have time to sell their home, need a new VA loan. This is a much less common occurrence. Claire, were the two that you did, were they two veterans, or were veteran, non-veteran, or one of each?
So both instances, it was they were like engaged and they just weren't married yet, but one veteran, one non-veteran.
Okay, so why don't you walk us through what that looks like? Because it's different. It's very different depending on whether we have two veterans that both have entitlement or a veteran and a non-veteran without their entitlement. And that, the one that you're dealing with, that was the same as mine. It was a mother who owned the home, and we added a veteran daughter on to do a refinance to buy out the husband and soon to be ex-husband. And most people don't know that's even a possibility. So why don't we start there and go down in that detail? Why don't you tell us what that looks like when a veteran and a non-veteran, non-spouse would like to buy together?
So one thing that's super important to remember or keep in mind is that they have to both be owner occupying. Like, this isn't like a co-signing mom, dad, brother, grandma, whatever. These are two people that are both occupying the property. They're both on the loan. And so basically, instead of doing zero down, like where the VA is guaranteeing 100%, it's like broken up where they have the veterans benefit, but then they're also bringing in a non-veteran without the benefit. And so it basically breaks down to, you're going to need a down payment to make it work. And this is where it gets a little weird, but it's like, they have this calculation where it's roughly between 12.5% and about 14.5%, depending on which lender you end up placing the loan with. So I'm a broker where I can shop it with different lenders, but different lenders have different, attorneys and ways they interpret the guidelines and rules and how they want to protect themselves. So it's kind of weird that you don't have an exact dialed in amount, but expect that range for a down payment. And, again, if the veteran is exempt, but has any amount of VA disability rating, they're exempt from the funding fee, that kind of thing. But the down payment is the key that, most people, a lot of people don't know that it's possible, but the way to make it work is you do have to have a down payment.
Go ahead, Amy.
I want to add, I have not actually closed a joint loan, but I have done a lot of research on this because for buyers, and then we end up not going forward with it. But the one other thing important to note with joint loans is that the non-veteran, their income not be used to subsidize income for the veteran. The veteran also has to be able to cover his portion of the loan with his own income. So that's like really important. Even if they live there and they cannot carry the entire, like if the veteran does not have any source of income, they cannot do that loan.
Right. That's one of the killers. Yeah. There's so many little stipulations, and really, like to what Claire was saying, it's really case by case, right? Yeah. Because what if you have a veteran too that like one's exempt, one's not, there's a lot of what ifs and super case by case. So very specific calculation for each deal.
Before we go to the two veterans, let's stick with this. Amy, you said you've done a bunch of research on these, and most borrowers don't ever do it. We're sitting here talking about they're not super common. We don't do a lot of them. Is it just that big down payment? The big 12.5. We deal with a lot of buyers doing 3, 5, 10% down. So we're at 12.5 plus a little bit there, depending on the lender and how they're doing the calculation. Are there any reasons really why they aren't more common, other than just most VA borrowers are looking to do a minimum down, and that big down payment kind of puts them out of the ballgame?
I think lack of knowledge plays a big role. I think a lot of just aren't aware that it's a possibility that they can get on a VA loan not being a veteran themselves. That's like one of the biggest misconceptions, because people just aren't really aware of joint loans. That's one, I'm sure there are other reasons, but and then down payment. I do see a lot of veteran buyers. They do expect no down payment, so they expect that if you get a VA loan, they don't, they don't understand the nuances of like bringing in a non-veteran into the mix, but they do expect no down payment, and a lot of times they expect no closing costs as well, and we have to separate that part. But yeah, so I see that.
Well, what were you saying, Glenn?
So I was going to say another reason too is just think about, like especially, and I know we're about to go into this the two veteran stuff, but usually if it's two veterans occupying a property, they're usually either engaged or they're getting married, right? They're usually a couple. It's not super common, and I know there's plenty of situations where it's out there, but where you have two veterans together, because one of the big misconceptions with that is if both of them qualify for, let's say, $500,000, they're automatically going to assume, oh, we can buy $1 million house with 0% down then together. Why don't we go do that? And it's like, I see how you got there. That is not a joint loan. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to the veteran, let's look at it. So if you guys have a buyer who comes and you say, well, we have one veteran, you guys are not married, or it's, your parent is going to live with you and they want to help you qualify. A lot of times once they hear the 12.5%, 13%, they go, well, that's dumb. Why would I do that? Mm-hmm. But there are still very valid reasons why you might want to put that big down payment and use a VA loan. What are you guys' thoughts? What would you tell a client of why you might choose to do that versus a 10% down conventional loan?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, because it's definitely something where, like Glenn was saying, case by case is important, because there's not a for sure yes or a for sure, oh, this is the obvious decision. The disability rating, I think, is a big piece of it, because if you can, VA rates are typically lower than conventional. So there's that right there. But if there's no funding fee, also, there's no mortgage insurance. So if you're comparing it side by side with conventional, sometimes it can make sense. If the down payment is really a hang up, obviously maybe you want to go conventional with 5% down or something like that. But like I had one of them, I just remembered I did a third one. I thought I only did two, but I thought of another one where it was the kids. It was a veteran parent, and then his daughter was going to move in with him to help take care of him. And he was selling a house. And so he had the down payment, like he had equity from that property. So it made sense. He was planning on putting money toward it anyway. And so that was like a no-brainer. And they could both be on the loan and qualify for more than what he could without her. But it's definitely something that you want to make sure you're considering all your options and penciling out all scenarios to see what's going to make sense in the short term, in your monthly payment, and in the long term, because there isn't one for sure answer for everyone. And it's just worth, making sure you've left no stone unturned when you're shopping.
And this is part of the reason why Chris created the vetted VA community, so that we have experts in VA financing and other types of financing to help the members here pencil this stuff out. Because with that, it's easy to sit here and say, in general, VA loan is going to have a lower rate than a conventional loan. It doesn't have mortgage insurance, but you do have that upfront funding fee. So you need someone who can go, okay, on a conventional loan with 10% down, a good credit score is going to have a minimal amount of monthly, or we could do a one-time upfront and sort of do an apples to apples comparison. That's what people like Glenn, Claire, Amy, and myself are here for, is to help you pencil that out, because there's not always a right answer. There's multiple options, and It's getting them presented to you accurately so that you can pick what's best for you. Because a lot of times there's trade-offs with them. So,
I have a question that you guys that have done these might be able to answer. I haven't done one before, just like Amy. You're still going off of AUS findings, right? So it's not like you're capped at a specific DTI as long as everything jives and your residual's all good, right?
So that's a really interesting question. My recollection of the one that we did, and it was about 14, 16 months ago, couldn't use AUS. You had to basically follow the manual guidelines, and it's important that you ask that question, because we're going to go through a big difference between veteran and non-veteran and two veterans, which was a recent change, in that if it's a veteran and a non-veteran, the lender themselves is not the only underwriter of the loan. They have to underwrite and approve the loan and send it out to VA. And for us, Claire, what was your experience with that? On the one that we had, they actually turned it around really quick. I was surprised.
Yeah, on all three of them, they were all purchases, and I was a little nervous because I had heard sometimes it can be quick, sometimes it can be slow. And in all three instances, it was, I mean, I would say 3 business days at max. Out of those, it was nothing crazy, but it's definitely something you have to kind of budget in for your timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because also, I don't know, Claire, what your lender told you on those. For us, they're like, we're not sending it to them until you're basically done. Here's your conditions. Get it your condition. So it's like,
you had to basically be totally clear to close and then start over again for a second look, basically.
Yeah. So that's definitely, it's unique to
like doing an 80-10-10 or something like that, where you have to have all the pieces, right?
Or USDA,
Yeah.
Is that like, so when they say prior approval, is that the prior approval? Is that secondary look the prior approval? You don't send it before.
The prior approval is the prior approval from the VA. So
it's like the VA reviews it before it closes rather than post-closing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
and
then they can.
Before we move on to the other types of joint loans, one caveat, or I don't know, funny story, I guess. A couple of times, we've talked about these different scenarios where I'm like, okay, we can do this. We do it 12.5% down or whatever. But we actually, my dad did a loan like this where they're considering that, and they just decided to get married and did 0 down.
I've had that.
It might just push you down the aisle.
Yeah.
I've done.
I drove to Reno, got married. Yeah.
Anyone who's
and the mother-in-law wrote my dad a thank you note, was like, I'm so excited they finally got married. This gave me the final push.
I don't know about you guys. I always feel a little bit weird suggesting it, but you're like, realistically, if you know you're going to get married, you may have the big wedding plan for next June. Yeah. Run to City Hall and get married now, because it's going to
usually you don't even have to suggest it. They just kind of like put 2 and 2 together of like, well, this makes sense.
Well, because as we mentioned it earlier too, and that is one of the things in the guidelines that talks about if you have 2 veterans and they're engaged, it's not treated as a joint loan, but the condition is they have to get married. So you're like, okay, what are we going to get under? We're going to get an underwriter condition, like give me the marriage certificate. Yes, you are. They're going to need to be married, and then it won't be a joint loan. It'll be a normal VA loan, 0% down.
So before we move on to veteran, anything else you guys feel like we haven't covered that we want to talk about?
No, I think it's really important what Amy brought up, though, about the income aspect on the veteran and non-veteran, that you can't just essentially be using the veteran, so to speak, as like a straw buyer, even though they're living in the house. But you know what I mean? Where it's like, hey, you're a vet. I'm going to use your benefit, and we're both going to live in the house. It's like, no, they have to have income to contribute to their piece. That's very important.
And it's also just important to, a lot of lenders don't do these at all. Like whether they don't even know about them, or they don't, or they have overlays with their companies that don't allow for them. So it's just important to, if that's what you're intending to do, you got to do your research and your homework up front and ask the questions. And then also, like I was saying earlier, like the down payment can vary. So, okay, am I doing 12.5% down, or am I doing 14.3% down? You just want to make sure that you know that stuff up front, because you're depending on who you work with, it can be a different answer. So.
I was going to say also that our scenario was like 2 individuals, 1 veteran, 1 non-veteran, but you could have more than 2. And in which case, the math could get a little funny. So yeah, that upfront is really important to structure the loan.
So at the end of the day, make sure you're dealing with someone who regularly does VA loans, who regularly deals with the VA homeownership center. So they're just a little more complex. You can't just go to someone that works in a call center that's done a VA loan or 2. They're a little bit more complex. So with that, why don't we jump into, now we have kind of a base of what it looks like when we have a veteran and a non-veteran. What does it look like, and how does it change when we have 2 veterans? Any of you can jump in and tell us what your thoughts are on that.
Well, the biggest thing is, and this is why I kind of brought up the thing about the income, the biggest thing is you can make up for some of those weaknesses. One veteran can kind of cover, so to speak, for the other, for income, for assets, but not for credit. Okay, you both have to meet, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but you both have to meet the minimum credit threshold. But you could then have one veteran that doesn't really have strong income or assets, and the other one's supplying all of that to the scenario, but you're using both of the entitlement. So I mean, that's really the big difference.
So with that, how are they hitting each entitlement? Glenn, are you familiar with how the math works on that when we're each splitting it 50-50 with two veterans?
Honestly, no.
They can actually request uneven distributions of use of entitlement. They can request that. However, the funding fee, from what I understand, is exactly half. Just because
regardless,
75, you don't do 75.5 funding fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where that comes into play, and why we kind of want to know that is, let's say the two veterans keep this home, and again, it is commonly couples that are not yet married that are both veterans. But what if it's two buddies that were served together and decided to buy a house, and later on one wants to move on? They might want to use their VA benefit, in which case they got to go back to episode 8 and figure out how that bonus entitlement would work. So that's a reason why you would split it up that way, because I always look at it and I say, we get this a lot in moderating, people saying, hey, my husband and I are both eligible, but we're going to use one. We want to save one for later. Do you guys want to talk about that? The benefits of saving versus combining on a loan?
So
yeah.
I was going to say it's most beneficial when one person has a disability rating and the other doesn't. So it does make sense. A lot of times they will put the the one with the disability as the primary so that they can get that fee waived.
Yep.
I did have a very specific situation where the wife, the spouse was living in the home or going to move in the home. She's the one with disability, but the husband did not, and they wanted him as the primary, but because he was overseas, they didn't allow him to be the primary. Something like that. So basically they ended up we could do it. They ended up having to pay the funding fee to move forward. So there's some nuances with that. Yeah.
Otherwise, in a normal situation, like you said, Josh, it's like use one of your entitlement. Don't combine them. At least that's my opinion, is don't combine them, because you essentially save that full shot for the next property if you were to retain that existing one. And you can go 0% down, no problem. Then you don't have to go into the bonus entitlement and all that. Because then you can both do a bonus entitlement. Like you can have 4 properties in like 5 years.
That gets that bonus entitlement cap, right? So like once you use a loan, so you use somebody's entitlement, then they're automatically capped for that next loan to that county limit.
Yeah, the county.
Yeah. So if you only use one person's entitlement and the other one is unfettered, then they don't have a limit for that next use.
Right. And I would say, and to that point, because we see this a lot from people going either from the Midwest or from the East Coast to the West Coast, is it really works well going to the West Coast, because like San Diego's like 750 is the San Diego loan limit, and they own a house in South Carolina or something. Going the other way, you bought in San Diego, and then going the other way, you've chewed up almost all of your entitlement and going to a cap, like a real standard cap county. So it's interesting the way that works. It's like buy the little bit cheaper house, then go to a PCS to an expensive area. You could probably pull it off.
Yeah. I have one that it's going right now. Actually, it closes in like 10 days, where it's 2 veterans together. And on the last house, the husband was primary. And on this one, and they're selling that one, moving to a different area. And for this next one, like neither of them had disability rating. And so it wasn't a difference of the funding fee. So it was just simpler to put the wife first on this one, just because then we can simultaneously close and not have to wait for things to clear. And sometimes it's just cleaner that way.
Absolutely. And you also, if you split them, then if you wanted to split again on the next purchase, wouldn't you then also be in a situation where your subsequent use, if you're not exempt, because they've both used it. So by staggering, I'm using one and then using the next, you both get to use that first time use if you're not exempt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah, it's a chess game.
And that's what's funny. Like every week we try to cover a different topic here, and we go like I go into these conversations thinking I've got a pretty good handle on all the nuances of it. And you can see with 4 brains here, there are so many things to think about this. And so it shocks me when veterans go out and they're just like, oh, my realtor suggested I talk to this person. And that person would be a great loan officer. You don't do a volume of VA loans. There's so much nuance to this program and how to maximize it to your benefit. I mean, I feel like I'm lucky. I get to be here every week and learn from the experience of everyone here of things that, you know, you only see so many loans. So when I get to talk to people that see a volume of loans and hear these little nuances, it's definitely helpful to learn. But bigger picture, just saying it is important as a veteran. You don't have to use a vetted VA loan officer, but make sure when you interview the person that you're wanting to do your financing, that they do a volume of VA loans and they're very familiar with the program and how to use it to your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Preach.
Absolutely.
So this is a good and important topic, but I really, you know, usually we go about an hour on these, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job of covering both sides of it. Are there any parts of this that you guys feel like we haven't gone into, or that any of the viewers or members here of the group should be aware of?
I did want to bring up that memo we kind of talked about earlier that just came out. So it used to be all joint loans required this extra step where the VA also has to kind of underwrite and approve your loan in addition to the lender doing that. They just released a memo, I guess, in May sometime that said that joint loans basically by people doing entitlement, so veterans, so any loan that doesn't have a non-veteran can use the automatic approval. So that would speed things up. So it's treated almost like a regular loan, I guess, in that sense. Right.
And it will probably open it up to more lenders, because like we talked earlier, about half of our lenders won't do these joint loans because of it having to go to VA. They don't want to deal with the extra complexity of it. I'll bet you the majority of our lenders and lenders around the country be like, yeah, we'll do that if we're able to handle everything in-house and not have to go for the prior approval with VA. So awesome that you remembered that, Amy, because it's important and it's a big improvement. Anything, the VA is actually pretty good for us to. If you talk about government agencies, the government agencies have a pretty bad reputation, but I don't know about you guys. When we need something, we're generally able to get answers, get things pushed through. They want to help veterans.
Yeah,
so absolutely.
On the ownership side, it is a good agency for us to work with.
Agreed.
Very true.
All right. Well, this is going to end up probably being by far our shortest episode, but you guys were awesome. A ton of content, and this doesn't come up often, but when it does come up, people need this knowledge. So we should chop this up and make sure we get this out there, because like you guys were saying, some of the reason why we don't do a lot of them is just lack of awareness. If people knew it was out there and how to use it and when to employ joint loans, I think it would be something that would be more common. So again, we didn't have any questions pop up tonight, but you guys did an awesome job. Thanks for giving us your time and knowledge here this evening. And again, thank you guys. And for those of you at home, we'll be back here every week on Thursday covering a topic. We appreciate you taking the time. All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.